What's going on, Common Good family? Thanks so much for tuning in to another Love Your Neighbor Sunday community partner conversation, where we are wanting to be intentional about using this space on Love Your Neighbor Sunday to both go out and find ways to love and serve our neighbors in very real and practical ways, and at the same time, to use this space to be intentional about highlighting the work and stories of different community leaders and organizations who are on the ground, on the front line, so to speak, loving and serving their communities in very real and tangible ways on an ongoing and regular basis. And so today I'm super excited for you to listen in on this particular conversation with Dr. Lisa Chin, who is the CEO of Treehouse, a Seattle-based nonprofit which envisions and strives to create a world where every child that has ever experienced foster care has the opportunities and support they need to pursue their dreams and launch successfully into adulthood. Lisa joined Treehouse as their CEO in the spring of 2020 and is a visionary strategist and fundraiser with more than 20 years of experience in senior executive leadership roles with a proven ability to scale mission-focused organizations. Lisa spent her career really focused on young people, education and equity-based systems change, providing opportunities to those who need it most. Prior to her role at Treehouse, she served as the founding executive director at Year Up, Puget Sound, and was also the CEO at Boys and Girls Club of King County. Lisa holds a doctorate in education from UCLA and a bachelor's degree in political science and art from Wellesley College. She has served on boards at Bellevue College, the Threshold Group, the Seattle Chamber, the Statewide Poverty Action Network, and Asian Counseling and Referral Services. Lisa is also a community member here at Common Good Church. And so, hey, without further ado, enjoy the conversation. Well, Lisa, first and foremost, thank you just so much for being here, for taking time to have this conversation. Really excited to be able to learn more about Treehouse and the work that you're doing there. But I think more importantly, just really excited to have the opportunity to introduce you to the rest of the Common Good family. I know a lot of folks at Common Good have not yet had the pleasure to meet you since you first started attending the church back, I think last summer it was. And I know most of that has been virtual. And I was so thrilled, obviously, to hear that you were part of one of our summer book clubs last summer. And then, of course, being able to meet you for the first time in person at one of our summer dinner parties was such a treat. So, and then to find out on top of all that, we're somewhat neighbors, right? Here on the same island, so to speak. So this is just really special to have this conversation with you. So again, thanks, Lisa, so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Before we jump in, and I do want to just jump in and again, we're going to, spend a bulk of our time just talking about the work that you're doing with your organization. But I think before we get to the work that you're doing, I think it's always great to kind of get to know the person behind the work. And so maybe you could start, Lisa, by just sharing a little bit about yourself. Who is Lisa? And I know that's a massive question. There's so many different ways that you could answer that, but maybe as a way just to kind of kick off the conversation. Who is Lisa? Maybe we could start there.
Thanks, Pastor Royce. For somebody, I spend so much of my time as the corporate storyteller that you'd think that I'd have something ready to tell you about, oh, this is me and this is my life. But right now, who am I? I'm really more than anything a mom. My 18-year-old is going to university in the fall, and that's really caused me to look back on just everything I've done until this point, and because it all has centered around that one child that I have. So first and foremost, I think I'm a mom, and then I'm kind of that in the sandwich generation, and both my parents are aging and their health is not that great. I'm also a daughter. I come from a Chinese family on the East Coast, and I'm either third generation or fourth generation on one side or the other, because my maternal grandmother was actually born as a U.S. citizen, but was sent back to China when she was about 4 or 5 years old because her father died. And so she and her three sisters were sent to live with their father's family, because they were considered property of them. So she was raised in China, and that story of hers really influenced. She didn't meet her mother again until she was married till she had come back to the United States, and nobody would tell her what had happened or why they were separated. So that story has really formed a lot of, influenced a lot in my family. My maternal grandmother was a very strong woman who lived with us at the end of her life. And it really has affected everything that I look at that's important in my life. She always put family first, and she was very, very strong about saying, you take care of each other. And that influenced my mom, who worked in the newspapers and then retired when she was retired from the New York Times. But the strongest memory I have of my mother is her going to work in the middle of a hurricane. And I remember saying, "Mom, what are you doing?" "The paper never sleeps." I'm like, and so that didn't realize until very recently that has actually kind of like driven my own sort of work ethic about just keep at it, which, has its good and its bad sides. But primarily, I think one of the gifts of growing up in an immigrant family is the determination that you won't be stopped when you set your goals, and when you have your heart set on something or it's important to the family, that's what you do. So that I've been thinking a lot about what's the point, Royce, you hit those points in those milestones in your life, and it causes you to reflect.
Yeah, that's great. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And I love that, right? So much of our stories and our history and our lived experiences shape who we become and who we are, right? And certainly motivates sometimes the why we do what we do. So, Lisa, how did you? I know you've spent many years serving in senior executive roles. You've done a lot of work in kind of the nonprofit sector as well. How did you what prompted that? How did you initially start working in nonprofits? And, is that somewhat connected as well to kind of your upbringing and your own story as well, coming from an immigrant family?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Pastor Royce. I got a doctorate in education a long time ago because my mother said, "Oh, it'd be really great if you were a teacher and you could be at home with your kids during the summer and off when they have holidays." I didn't realize it at the time she'd said that, because I really wanted to be a lawyer, but I ended up getting a doctorate in education because my husband at the time reminded me, "Oh, your mother told you should do it." Talk about influence, right? But I ended up working in for-profit for a while. I was a program manager at a tech company, got laid off after the dot-com bust, and then was trying to figure out what my doctors told me I'd never be able to conceive a child on my own. None of the other things worked, and I got laid off from my job at the tech company at the time, and started to think about what was important to me, and ended up going on a Buddhist retreat, and discovered on that retreat, after some failed IVF sessions, discovered on that retreat that I was pregnant, and that I'd gotten that way, the old-fashioned way. And so my son, I tease him. He spent the first few weeks of his conceived life at a Zen Buddhist monastery. So,
wow.
what a gift, right? Thank you, Lord, for granting the prayer that was so close to my heart. So after that, because that one most precious prayer had been answered, I was a career woman. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this at this point. I'm career oriented, I'm goal driven. And that was the one thing I couldn't do without, a whole lot of prayer and a whole, opening and soul searching and everything. So, so that's how I got into the nonprofit world, because Benjamin was born, and I never wanted to work to make money or to work without a purpose ever again, because the gift of life was beyond precious. It wasn't something I could save up for. Wasn't something I could press a button for, go to school for. It was something, truly God's grace. And He gifted me with that baby. And after that, it was, okay, this is the most important human being that I've been gifted with. And everything in my life will be geared towards, guided by my love for Him. And what that meant was not, buy him everything he wanted. But it occurred to me when, I was sleep deprived, like all new parents are, right? You hit that wall, you don't know what time it is, right? Your milk is covering all of you, and you hit a wall. And it occurred to me that the only way that not only was I going to pass out of this world before he did, but when that happened, who was going to love my baby? Who was going to take care of him? And so it occurred to me that the only way I could make it okay was if I made it so that the world loved him.
Hmm.
So how was I going to do that? How was I going to change the world so
Hmm.
that it would be a place that loved my son and therefore loved every child? Because I don't think that any parent, I think, well, let me rephrase it. Every single parent I know who gives birth to a child, who loves a child, loves the child.
Hmm.
I don't care what the circumstances are. I really deeply believe that we do love our children. So I had to figure out how to change the world. And that wasn't going back into tech. It wasn't being a program manager. It was working in the nonprofit sector where the outcomes and all the outputs are all about people and changing the conditions so that people can live better lives. And in many cases, so that people can even have basic needs met, so that everybody has a chance to have a day or a lifetime where they don't have to worry about anything. So that's how I got into the nonprofit world.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I love that. So let's talk about the work that you're doing currently. You are the CEO at Treehouse, and which actually you haven't been in this role that long. I believe that you joined it in the pandemic. I believe it was April 2020. Yeah. Wow. Tell us a little bit about the organization. What do you do? Who do you serve? And kind of what is your role as the CEO of Treehouse?
Well, I actually started March 30th, which is the day that Governor Inslee locked the state down. So on that day,
Wow.
I feel like I still haven't met my entire staff. It's been over 2 years later. So
Wow.
Treehouse is a private nonprofit that serves 7,000 foster kids in the state of Washington. We are statewide, and what we do is we support youth in foster care to graduate or complete their high school educations. That's our primary focus. And on the way to that, we also support youth in foster care to get jobs, through another program, to get jobs or think about what they want to do post high school. So whether that's jobs or school or, adulting skills, if you will, teaching them how to balance their bank accounts and stuff. We do that. We also support young people in K through 8 who need educational support because it's all about education for us. And then at the holidays, we make sure that youth in foster care receive, through the generosity of the community, brand new toys and gifts that they request. Last year, during last Christmas, we shipped out 4,000 wrapped individual new gifts in a big, huge trailer full of stuff across the state.
Amazing.
So yeah, so that's what we do. We serve 7,000 young people experiencing foster care in the state of Washington, and we help them with their education and sometimes with their basic needs.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Can you share a little bit about maybe for those of us who are not as privy or knowledgeable to kind of the foster care system and how it works, other than maybe from what we might learn from the media or from watching a movie? What exactly, how does the foster system work? How do kids end up there in the first place? And, kind of what typically happens when they do?
Yeah, that is a very good question. The foster care system, a lot of people think about it and think, call CPS, Child Protective Services, and that's
Right.
a part of it. Youth end up in foster care because it was created as to keep children safe. So if a teacher, for example, or a pastor or a neighbor or someone believes that a child is in an unsafe situation, they can call Child Protective Services and say, this youth is in danger in their home and they need your support. And a social worker will come make a determination and either take the children into foster care or not. They can also enter because their parents or aunts or someone else says that, I cannot take care of this child, and they get placed in foster care. We also, Treehouse also serves youth who are in what is called federal foster care. So if Ukrainian kids younger than 18 emigrate here, they are considered, they are not with their birth parents, because that's really the definition, is children who are not with their birth parents. If they come here, they're known as federal foster care, and we care for them as well. We support them and support their needs, even though the state does not recognize that they are youth in foster care. So it's not hard to get in. The numbers aren't huge, but once you enter the foster care system, it really changes you for life, and usually not in a good way. It's also, children can go in and out of foster care. The very popular negative stereotype that people think, which is not, it's not the case, is not the majority of youth, of kids in care, is, a mother or a father who are absent, another parent who is substance abusing or abusive some other way, and the kids get taken. That's certainly one case, but there's also cases where, if someone can't support their family, they go into foster care. Or let's say parents die and there's nobody in the family to take them. Or even if there is someone in the family to take them, we call that kinship care, because it's not their birth parents, but let's say an aunt or a grandmother takes in the youth. They can actually apply for foster care benefits because you're not their birth parents. So that's generally how people, how youth get in. Teachers will see a youth, and they'll because they see them on a regular basis, they'll notice if something is wrong and a child isn't being cared for. And that's where a lot of our referrals come in, is from teachers.
Gotcha. That's helpful. You had talked about maybe some of the negative perceptions, misconceptions that people have in terms of, how a child ends up in foster care. I was also thinking about maybe some of the perceptions as to, what the foster care system is like, right? And you maybe hear this, that I've heard, maybe some of the stories around the abuse or the neglect that happens within kind of the foster care system. And you would even share that, it can be very challenging once a child enters into the system. Can you share a little bit more just about what are some of the challenges within the foster care system? What are some of the inequities that are there that different children face? I think I saw on your website, and this really stood out to me. On your website, it states that Treehouse, your organization, advances equity and racial justice in the foster care and education system. And so it seems to me that that's one of the specific things or areas, right, that you're really trying to pay attention to. So can you maybe unpack a little bit of kind of what are some of those inequities that exist within the foster care system, and perhaps how that even correlates with some of the other injustices or inequities within the educational system as a whole, or some of these other systems as well?
Well, that is absolutely true. That we do say that on our website. A disproportionate number of youth in the foster care system are brown and Black kids. Gotcha. They are overrepresented. So, for example, I'm trying to think of the statistics, because I've got some youth demographics here in terms of who we serve. But I think if we look at them, hold on, let me flip to the page that I wanted to talk to you about. Okay, so of the youth that we serve, 21% of them are multiracial. Well, only 35% of them are white. And the other 65% in the system are multiracial, African American, Hispanic, Native, or other, right? But they're not white kids. And so that's 65% kids, the kids of color. And that's because we believe that systemic racism exists to force parents into situations where they can't care for their kids. There is a disproportionate lack of advantage for families of color. Roughly, 21% multiracial, 16% African American. This is the makeup of the youth that Treehouse serves. Those percentages are higher than what the population in the state of Washington actually is. And so that's what I mean when I say disproportionate. So there's so many factors. When you think about who gets left behind in education, it's also disproportionately brown kids, disproportionately poor kids. They are not served equitably by the education system in general. And when you compound that with foster care, we call it having the state as your parent. And when the state is your parent, you don't have a really good parent. The state does not advocate for its students in education. So think about it this way. Royce, if you had adopted a young person, let's say you adopted a 6-year-old, or I'm not adopted, but you're fostering a 6-year-old. You're a good person. You love that kid. You want the best for that kid. But the trauma of actually being abandoned by their family or not being in their family sets up a dynamic for that young person that really does impact them quite a bit. And as caring and as loving as you are, you do the best for the youth. Because that youth isn't your birth child, the state will not allow you, the foster care system will not allow you to make key decisions about their education. That right still belongs with the birth family, whether the birth family is in this state, in another state, can be found, is incarcerated, it doesn't matter. Right?
Gotcha.
And often trauma, there's been a lot of studies on trauma, whether it's PTSD or other kinds of trauma. You may have heard of the adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs test, that is a measurement of how much trauma children have endured. And the correlation is that the higher your number on the ACEs test, the more likely you are to be incarcerated, low income, abused or abusive because of the impacts of those trauma. And foster care, youth experiencing foster care are one of the most traumatized populations you'll ever see. So it's also difficult for a youth or youths to keep a stable placement while they're in foster care for so many reasons. Families that become foster families, so many of them are so good, wonderful people who really want to care for the children of someone else's children. But they also are mostly, sometimes unequipped. The training that is offered by the state is not enough for, say, one of our examples is a foster mom who has her own kids, really wonderful person. She was asked to take an emergency placement of 3 siblings. And an emergency placement is, the kids are in danger, they're removed. They've got to find a place for them while they get them into the system. So they called this young lady who was a Treehouse client. She knew about us and she knew that we would help her. And the 3-year-old that she took in, it was 3, 6, and 10. The 3-year-old she took in, this was not their first placement. The 3-year-old would use every corner of every room as a potty. That was one of his trauma responses. The 10-year-old would steal food and hide it under the mattress and act out. And I believe the 8-year-old was not even reading. Because when home is unstable and dangerous, it just continues to spiral, which is also why when you look at other disadvantaged populations of young people, like the homeless youth, roughly 40% of them were or are in the foster care system. Many of them run away if they get to a certain level or have so much trauma in their homes that they end up being homeless. It's also a similar alarming statistic with youth and juvie, kids in juvenile detention. Over 40% of them were or are in the foster care system as well. So it is a very traumatizing experience to be in it. And, child welfare was created to keep people safe, but its impacts on the lives of children, because the system is so imperfect, sometimes compounds the trauma.
Yeah. Wow. So from kind of your vantage point, your perspective then in the work that you're doing, what are some of the solutions then, or what are some of the specific things that Treehouse is really trying to do to address those disparities that you're seeing?
Well, we have, in addition to providing direct service, so we also have a very robust advocacy arm where we show up in Olympia, we talk to lawmakers, and we partner with other nonprofits to say, the following laws are going to advantage young people. You need to change them, or disadvantage youth in foster families. There was one law that we, along with a number of other agencies, advocated to get passed last year, and that was a law that placed a foster care representative in every single high school. It used to be in every district, and you know how many high schools there are. There's two on Mercer Island, there's so many in Bellevue. And if you have one foster care liaison for the entire district, they're never going to find all the kids. But if you have one in every high school, you have a much better chance of giving them a chance and a support before they get into trouble in education. So it's things like that that we do to try to do upstream change and advocacy work on behalf of our youth. What else do we do? The reason we believe very much that education can really change a life. And so for the younger kids, K through 8, we have our educational advocacy program. And that is someone who, let's say you are an educational advocate, Royce. A family would call you and say, Royce, my 5-year-old is in detention, or my 5-year-old it can't read and I'm being told that they have to go into a different track, track for kids with learning disabilities. Well, you would say, okay, let me go with you to the school. And you would then know that the school has resources of a behavioral counselor, that the child is entitled to all kinds of testing, and that there are other alternatives. And you would be there to advocate for the fostering family as well as the youth, because you would know what other services were available to the child in the school system. So our educational advocates do that in K through 8. The educational specialists in high school meet directly and form relationships with youth who are experiencing foster care. And we sometimes are the only stable adult presence in their lives. We have youth who we have known since they were little, up through their 20s, who now, some of them actually have come back and worked with us. They're now part of my staff because we've hired them. So, the high school program is, we will work with you. And Royce, if you were one of my high school kids, it would be every week. How's your grades? How are you doing? Are you on track? Royce, what do you need a bus card. You have to get to school. That's why you were late. You don't have food? Okay, we'll get you that. You need sneakers? You got it. Let's talk about what your plans are. And, how's your math going? You need a math tutor? Let's talk about what you can get. When's the last time you went to the dentist? Wait, Royce, you can't see the board. You need glasses. That's what our educational specialists do. And you can see how much we step in to support a family that is not the birth family, but really primarily through supporting the youth. Asking them what they need to make sure that they complete their high school diplomas, and that then they go on and think about how they want to be a successful adult.
I love that. Wow, that's so good. What would you say to somebody watching this who is asking, what can they do? How can they support either an organization like you or children, right, that are going through the foster care system? The Bible, obviously we're, as people of faith, and I'm thinking about even the scriptures and the Bible, it talks a lot about caring for children and certainly caring for orphans, right? James 1:27, like what is religion that is pure and faultless before God? It's religion that cares for the widow and for the orphan. I guess maybe a two-part question. One would be like, what do you feel like the church could do, the church as a whole, Christians, what do you think the church can be doing or should be doing, maybe that they're currently not, in terms of really caring, right, for orphans or for those in the foster care system, for children as a whole? And then maybe more specifically, what are things that, let's say somebody at Common Good who's like, and you're sharing these stories, these statistics, like I want to do something. I want to use my influence, my resources to help. Maybe what are some specific things that they could do to kind of come alongside of the work that you're doing?
Well, Royce, I love that, because I really believe that we need to change the system of laws, the education system, the child welfare system, so that those systems love our children. Because if children are loved, if they are seen as the precious humans that they are, we would not allow them to suffer this way. We would not allow them to be parentless. We would, as a society, as people of faith, we would see the children as precious and do what it took to make sure that our children, everyone's child, was thriving. So my suggestion is that if you know of an organization, even if it's your local school, even if it's an after-school program that you can lend a few hours to that needs your help, please do it, because it does take all of us. And often, children remember the adults, the people in their lives who saw them as more than their circumstances. So if it's not Treehouse, maybe your school could use your time in the playground, or needs your help with the teachers need pencils or need extra money. Do that, because there is not enough resources to go around for children to just be children. For Treehouse specifically, we run a store. We used to call it the warehouse, but it's a store where foster families and foster kids can come and shop with dignity for free. You make an appointment, or you go online, because we serve all kids in the state of Washington who are eligible. So we shipped things to them. So if, let's say again, you have a 2 or 3 adopted foster kids, and you're like, okay, I got a baby and I have a 15-year-old. The 15-year-old needs 5 pairs of pants and 3 shirts, and the baby needs a book, and you can come to the store and shop for those things. Or you can call us if you can't make it to the store and fill out the form and say, here's what I need. Here's how many kids and we always ask the question, is there anything else you need? And often somebody will go, yeah, mom, woman's size 6 rain boots and toothpaste. And we do our best to give them everything, even if it's not for the kids who are the foster kids. So we need volunteers in our store, because we only have brand new things for people. It's about dignity, Royce. It's not about shame. It's about lifting people up. So we take donations of brand new clothes, brand new everything. We've had lots of mentors come in. We need help in our warehouse sorting clothes. At Christmas time, we need people to come in and shop for our families. We ask for people to do clothing drives at the holidays, to do gift drives. You can take a Christmas tree and put on 17 different kids who need stuff. We put their wish lists, our Treehouse wish list for our youth, on Amazon. The donations help. We also recently have been asked to tend a pea patch that used to be run by another nonprofit. And so we need help gardening, weeding, tending it, and it's truly a beautiful place. So there's lots of volunteer opportunities on our website, but really it's about, if it's not us, and it doesn't have to be us, whatever you can do, wherever you see a place that serves children, there's so many nonprofits that need your help.
Yeah, I love that. Such a beautiful thing. And I love that encouragement of really in whatever capacity, right? I think sometimes it's easy to look at the immensity of problems, right? And I think to get paralyzed in that, but I love what you're suggesting is, whatever you're able to contribute, like it matters, it has impact.
It does.
And do something, which I think is awesome. And I know we're having some conversations with you. I know Pastor Leanna had a conversation with you about potentially us being able to come around Treehouse and perhaps partner together. So, looking forward to continuing those conversations as well. So folks can jump onto your website. It's, and I want to make sure I'm getting it right. It's, I believe, treehouseforkids.org. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Awesome. Well, any kind of final words, thoughts for those tuned in that are watching this, folks from the church, those outside of our community?
Just a great big thank you. A great big thank you, because Love Your Neighbor Sunday and the willingness of the Congregation of Common Good Church to truly embrace all humans, to really answer the Lord's call. To put their hearts out there, to love your brothers and sisters. I love this congregation in this church and find that I feel so much closer to my faith and my Lord through this congregation. So I just want to say thank you for the inspiration and the support that I get whenever I'm speaking with someone who's part of the congregation. So a lot of gratitude and for the blessing of this church.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Lisa. And hey, know that it goes both ways. I've been so personally inspired and touched by the work that you're doing, and your heart for God, your heart for people, and your willingness to really give yourself fully to the work that you're doing. I know comes really out of a genuine care for people that you serve and for the kids that you serve. And so, we're really excited to be able to find ways to collaborate, to partner together. And thanks so much for really doing this on a day-to-day basis. You're living out, right, this call to love neighbor. And you're doing so on a day-to-day basis. So I just want to encourage you, keep up the good work. I know there probably are a number of times where maybe you feel exhausted in the work and, the problems that are in front of you, but keep fighting the good fight. And, whatever we could do as a community, as your church family to support you and the work that Treehouse is doing, we want to be able to do so. So Lisa, thank you again so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And for all those that tuned in and watched, I hope you'll at some point have an opportunity to meet Lisa in person. And again, go check out their website. And if there's anything that maybe you're just feeling pricked on your heart to say, hey, I want to help, I want to contribute, I want to volunteer, even if it's 1 or 2 hours a week or a month, get in touch with Lisa. And we love to be able to make that happen. So thanks, everybody. Until we meet again, God bless, stay safe. And we'll talk to you soon.